But now, I'd like to introduce you to a gentleman who knows a lot about the allure of the New England forest and also knows quite a bit about what it means when you don't catch and release your brook trout and you have too many in your basket. Please welcome John Ford, ladies and gentlemen. John, you enjoying your stay here in the Valley?
I'm loving it.
Good.
I'm loving it.
Thanks for coming to the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I read the book and I really enjoyed it. It was a great read. The book is short stories about your experience as a warden. Now, you were a game warden in the 70s and 80s?
I went into the Central Maine area back in September of 1970 and retired in 1990.
1990, okay. So can you tell us a little bit about the difference between being a game warden then and what it might be like now for the wardens of today?
How long is your show? Actually, it really was. There's a big difference. When I came to work, I was given a little brass compass and a .38 revolver and a cruiser, and I was told that this is your district, go out and have fun. And so I actually was a game warden for 6 months before I went to school. And it was kind of on-the-job training. I was put into an area where poaching was a way of life, Central Maine area, where it was actually so bad in the area that I went into that the poachers up there had a slush fund that they kept for anybody that got caught for night hunting. They didn't have to pay it out of their own pocket. It came out of the slush fund from in town. So, I mean, it really was an interesting career. The warden that I replaced actually had the windows shot out of his house when his wife and daughter was laying on the floor and didn't know if they was going to live, so the department wanted to hire a single guy, and I was single, willing to go anywhere. And Burnham, Maine is where I ended up.
Now, you mentioned that in your book, you talked about how being a game warden was a 24/7 24 hours a day, 7 days a week job. You're constantly on call.
Right.
I'm curious, how did that affect your personal life?
Well, it was pretty good. When I first went up to the area, I didn't know how to cook, so I lived off in tomato soup and crackers. And I found out that if you mixed it with water, it was okay, and if you mixed it with milk, it tasted a little better, but that was my diet. And then I had a state trooper friend that I met up there that couldn't stand my being single, introduced me to this good-looking girl in the town of Belmont, and so I ended up getting married and I had someone to cook my meals afterwards, so it worked out well. And God bless her, she's been a sweetheart because she's been through a lot.
That's your wife, Judy?
Right, right.
Judy's here tonight, folks, in the audience, and I bet she deserves a round of applause, too.
And if you don't mind, please buy a book. Her and her mother's up here, and they've been shopping in Conway, and I don't know if I'm going to have any money when I get back to Maine. So.
Now, in your book, John, you mentioned, quite a few of the fellas that you had to cite, be it smelt fishermen or people out night hunting or whatever it might be, that a lot of them you had an amicable rapport with and would call them friends.
That's right. When I first came on, my stepfather was a game warden in southern Maine, down in Sanford, Maine area. And he told me when I went to that area, he said, look, you want to go up there and you want to treat people with respect. And treat them the way you'd want to be treated yourself. If you do that, he said, I'm going to tell you right now, they shot deer in that country illegally before you got there. They're going to shoot deer illegally there while you're there. And they're going to shoot deer illegally after you've gone. And he was absolutely right. But one of the best things that he told me was to keep a diary. And he says, keep a diary of the funny things, of the things that you want to remember out of your career. And thank God I did it, because I'm sure some people here in the audience can relate to it. I can't remember what I did yesterday. If I didn't have that diary, you know, it's been a godsend, and the book is derived from that. So,
well, in your time on the force, could you tell our audience about maybe one of the most dangerous situations you were in as a game warden?
Well, there's 2 or 3 of them. I caught a bunch of night hunters that had a deer snare out behind a camp in the town of Troy. 3 o'clock in the morning. A couple of young fellas had put me onto this thing, and they had a monofilament fish line strung through the woods back to their camp with a Pepsi can that was went in through the kitchen window that was full of rocks and stuff, so that if a deer got caught in this trap, that it would alert them when the can was bouncing up around the sink. So I touched her off at 3 o'clock in the morning and hid behind a pine tree, and they was the first night hunters I ever caught in pajamas at 3 o'clock in the morning, when, looking down the barrel of a 12-gauge shotgun as I stood there with my little pea shooter, my 38, and it's like going to war with a slingshot, but that was kind of a hair-raising experience. But I think probably the most dangerous is near the end of my career, when I was chasing a couple of murderers that had escaped from the Thomaston prison, and I was working with the state police, and we'd been tracking these guys on a hot August day, and they ended up holding us at gunpoint, shooting the dog, and you know, it was a hair-raising time that I didn't know if I was going to make it home or not.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Well, there's probably quite a few times you walked out the door and over the course of the day wouldn't know if you were going to be walking back in.
Right.
It sounds hair-raising. Now, in the green room, when we were sitting back there talking before we came out on the show here, you mentioned you were talking about this moose that was camped out on the Meridian up there. And
oh yeah, up on the interstate. Yeah.
Yeah.
A young bull moose decided it wanted to live in the between the north and southbound lanes of the interstate, and had been there for probably about 2 weeks, and it ended up that there's one thing I don't know if any of you have ever noticed, but you can go out on that interstate and you can't get people to slow down if they was ready to run into a cement truck. I mean, this moose had been tranquilized. We had all kinds of state police units with the blue lights out there trying to slow traffic down. Everybody was passing us at about 75 or 80 miles an hour with a drunk moose running along in between the lanes, and finally it collapsed, and we took it to a pasture out in Canaan, Maine, and let it go, and stayed with it until it came to and staggered off, and he never found his way back to the interstate. So. But I think he might have got shot a week later. So.
Well, that's better than being hit by a car, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now, the rapport that you had with some of these folks that you had to bust, can you think of a particular story that might?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting, and this isn't in the book, but I've told it afterwards because a guy came to me and told me about it. One thing about poachers is whenever they get a chance to pull the wool over the game warden's eyes, they think they've accomplished quite a feat. They like to brag about it. But usually they wait till statute of limitations is run out so they can't be held accountable. And it was long after I retired, there's a fellow from Burnham by the name of Alfred came to my house, and my partner and I had been working night hunters in the town of Burnham, and there's one thing about whenever we went into town, they had CB radios. And the minute that we showed up in town, they'd have spies in the window and said the redcoats just went by the Winnicook Road, and someone up on the end of the Winnicook Road said they turned left, and so they knew pretty well where we was going all the time. Well, it seems that Alfred had shot this deer at 1 o'clock in the morning, and the neighbor called the state police. My partner and I went screaming over to the house, and thinking surely we was going to get a good night hunting pinch out of it. And when we walked in, Alfred had been tipped off that someone heard it on the scanner and been tipped off that we was coming. So he opened up his house to us and told us we could search anywhere we wanted to. And, you know, any house that, when we went in, I found a couple of deer hairs in the hallway, but that was typical for a house in Burnham. I mean, they all had deer hair in them. But anyway, Alfred was really friendly, and Alfred said, look, he said, search anywhere you want to. Well, we searched the whole place, and there was one room left. And I said, what's in that room? And Alfred says, my wife's in there, and Mother's been in there, she's had the flu, and she's wicked sick. Now, you can look in if you want to, but I don't want you going in there disturbing her. So I remember opening the door, and I can remember flashing the light, and this poor woman, just white as a ghost, pulled the blankets down. And, you know, so I was satisfied that everything was on the up and up. We left. We never found the deer. Alfred told me, I think it was something like 20 years later, you know where that deer was? And I says, where was it? He says, in bed with Mother. And he said, Mother had a young buck in bed, and that was my last night of hunting. So, I mean, that was one of the stories, and you have to laugh at it. I mean, I always looked at it as job security, that you just never knew from one minute to the next what was going to happen. So, I loved it.
Yeah, it sounds like you enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Now, you're in your third publication of your book?
It's been, it's been run 3 times now, and it came out in April, and I told Judy when we wrote it, I said, if we sell 25 of these, we'll be lucky, but God, it's just gone wild. And matter of fact, I just signed a contract with 45 more stories of incidents. And what I tried to do is I tried to keep it so that I didn't want to talk about the tragic things, the drownings or the hunting accidents or the many things that we have to do. I talked about the things, situations where I put myself in some of the stupidest moves that you can ever imagine. But I figured if I was going to laugh at others, I had to be able to laugh at myself. So that's what the book is basically about. It's an easy read. You don't have to follow it along because every title is probably 2 or 3 pages long, and it's a real-life adventure of things that happened when I was on patrol. And thank God I kept that diary, because it's been the best thing I ever did.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Cold river flow through the valley below, neath the frosted pines and mountains white with snow. Cold river flow on your way down to the sea. I'll go with you, though in dreams I'll be. You'll take me far away to the place I'm dreaming of, and then you'll shine and twinkle in the sunlight from above, and we'll forget about our troubles. We'll forget those stormy skies. We'll just roll out and greet them with the sunlight in our eyes. Cold river flow, sing your sweet song of cool spring waters sparkling 'neath the moon.